I think I've had this conversation even 5 years ago with some of my colleagues, and I think nothing has really changed. I don't know if it really will. I think it's really hard because let's say if you approach I'm assuming there's 3 top brewing companies that have designed their proprietary skids that are probably password protected under NDAs. What would incentivize them to share, let's say, code on a third party platform that they would necessarily just not have control over? But I also agree that I think that's the right approach, but I don't know how to make it worth their while from like a business standpoint, right? I can see why they would be reluctant and they would keep that as a proprietary process. So
Yeah, I think it might be similar to how a lot of the industrial communication protocols have become open, right? They were started as vendor specific Ethernet IP, Profinet, EtherCAT, and then became open because essentially they want other companies to adopt that protocol and make hardware devices on that. A similar use case of why the code being open might make sense. And I think a lot of the just main Java or Oracle being spun off into an open platform, something similar happened.
yeah, and I think maybe if there's enough, I'm thinking similar to the Linux Foundation or the Cloud Native, like the CNCF Foundation. I think if there's enough maybe pressure of a nonprofit that starts on that route, then it might happen. But I am not sure that in the current environment there's enough, not necessarily pressure, but I guess that there's enough incentive, right, for them to go that route. And I don't know who that party would be. It could be one of the associations, right? So they might have some, not necessarily power, but I guess some, how do you say, like some negotiation strength to incentivize them. Hey, maybe within, not necessarily completely open source, but within, let's say, this network, make your software available. Maybe that's the next step. But again, I'm not sure we will get there. Any final thoughts on that side?
I
Because
think that's a challenging one.
that's a debate, right? That could happen in our lifetime, hopefully. But like I said, I'm skeptical. Let me ask you, like, your thoughts on some of the new tools, right? So, as you mentioned, you have to pretty much upskill yourself and the company, and some more clearer practices than others. So, I'm curious, what are your perspectives maybe on utilizing? We've talked about AI a little bit, but AR, VR also plays some role, and it's not necessarily building stuff for AR, VR stuff, but being applied in industrial automation, same as like IoT in the Industry 4.0. What are some of the other ones I want to talk about? The
Digital twin maybe is one.
digital twin, exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
simulation and digital twin. Maybe thoughts on those.
Yeah, one thing I think that I didn't mention earlier that I think is interesting to about the Bay Area is that those concepts are being thought of as a product in the Bay Area, and I've seen where startup companies there are going outward to other manufacturing applications saying, "Hey, we have this idea for a robot that can, I don't know, adapt in this particular way. I don't know, a movement, for
Okay.
example, for in automotive, let's say." And I've actually gotten calls where it's, "Do you think this is a good idea?" So I think it's interesting to think that it's actually happening in reverse, where I'm going with industrial automation more towards the Bay Area, but the Bay Area is coming up with AI
Mm.
techniques that can be applied to manufacturing and trying to like pull up the technology. But as far as not that area where it's already like a given that you're going to use these industry 4.0 concepts, I think that if it's a legacy company or a company that has had not a lot of reason to invest in digital transformation yet, I think it makes sense to think about what is required to actually make your company compete and stay competitive as like overall the technology is coming up. I would think that in 100 years, most companies, not if not all companies, are going to be using all these concepts of whatever we come up with to actually get to industry 5.0 or whatever, right? Like we're not using steam engines anymore for a reason. But how you get there and stay competitive as a company is at what level you're going to invest. And like, I would think about it as where can you make incremental change and prove that this is a good idea? For example, being able to digitally track the orders that you fulfill in a manual assembly line. We work with Tulip. Tulip is like a
Mhm.
basically like a software app, like an MES application where you can create your own apps that can digitally track work orders or assembly instructions. And their philosophy is to basically start small, make a small pilot project, prove that you can get value out of eliminating paper. For example, from like not handing someone a piece of paper and how many did you make today? Okay, here, let me go write this on a whiteboard. But actually making an app that's very specific to that manufacturing process and then building out from there. And I think that concept applies a lot to any type of these industry 4.0 things. If you say that you're going to be going from writing everything down and then the next year going to be completely digitally transformed, that's probably impossible and completely overwhelming, not to mention disruptive to that business, right? So there has to be a champion that wants to do this and bring everyone on culturally to try out robotics, try out these things and incrementally improve their business. And that doesn't necessarily mean technology. It means like being a good business overall and using these tools to help you.